The moving truck was blocking half the cul-de-sac. 6:12 inches the evening. Arizona heat still sitting on the pavement like a second layer of sunlight. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours earlier in the cup holder of my F-150, and the only thing moving in Sunridge Palms was the shimmer coming off the concrete. The fountain at the entrance sprayed water 30 feet into the air, like the neighborhood was trying to convince itself it lived in luxury instead of the middle of a desert. I had just stepped out of the truck when the white SUV rolled up behind me. Slow, deliberate, the kind of slow people use when they want you to notice they've arrived. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out wearing a bright pink blazer that looked too expensive for daylight. Mid-50s, tall, thin in the sharp, controlled way wealthy women get when they treat carbohydrates like moral failure. Silver blonde hair, cut perfectly straight at the shoulders. Makeup untouched by the heat. She carried a leather clipboard portfolio against her chest, like a police officer carrying citations. She smiled at me the way people smile right before they start explaining rules.
Good evening. I'm Karen Holloway, president of the Sunridge Palms HOA.
There are people who introduce themselves with names. Karen introduced herself with authority. I looked at her. Then I looked at the stack of boxes still sitting in my driveway. Then I looked at the giant sign behind her at the entrance fountain. Sunridge Palms, a community of distinction. That should have warned me. Karen walked closer without waiting for permission. Her heels clicked against the driveway like tiny hammers. You're Daniel Brooks? Yes, ma'am. Recently transferred from California? Recently escaped California. That got half a laugh out of her. The kind people do when they don't want humor interrupting control. Well, she said, opening the portfolio, we're very serious about preserving standards here. She handed me a packet thick enough to stop a handgun round. Community regulations, pool regulations, exterior paint regulations, trash can regulations, holiday lighting regulations. One entire highlighted section titled Visual Harmony Expectations. I flipped one page, then another. 37 pages? I asked. Karen smiled wider. Oh, that's just the abbreviated version. Behind her, my daughter Mia made a choking sound, trying not to laugh. Mia was 16, tall like her mother, dark curls always tied into a careless knot that somehow still looked deliberate. Emily used to say, Mia had inherited my stubbornness and her sarcasm in equal amounts, which was God's way of apologizing for teenagers. She was leaning against the garage wearing oversized headphones around her neck, filming Karen with her phone held low against her thigh. Karen noticed immediately. Control freaks always notice cameras. And you must be the daughter. Mia, she said flatly. Karen gave her the same smile she'd given me, but tighter around the edges. We encourage positivity in Sunridge Palms, Mia. Social media misunderstandings can create unnecessary tension in communities like ours. Mia blinked. Weird thing to say out loud. I saw Karen's jaw tighten for exactly 1 second. Then the smile returned. People like Karen didn't lose composure. They stored it for later. I'm sure your family will adjust beautifully, she said, as long as everyone respects the rules. She glanced past me toward the backyard, toward the pool. That caught my attention. The house had sold cheap because the previous owner died during probate litigation, and the property sat empty almost a year. The pool back there was one of the reasons Emily had loved the listing when I showed her the photos in hospice. Live somewhere with water, she'd whispered that afternoon. Even fake water feels peaceful. I bought the house 3 weeks after her funeral. Some decisions aren't rational. They're just grief-wearing work boots. Karen kept staring toward the backyard. That pool light, she said casually. It reflects into my bedroom after dark. I followed her gaze. You can see my backyard from your house? Most things are visible if you pay attention. There it was. The first real sentence. Not neighborly, not welcoming, a warning. I'd spent 23 years working environmental compliance contracts for the state of California. Rooms full of angry executives, lawyers, politicians, people who mistook volume for leverage. Karen had the exact same energy. Small kingdom, large ego, weaponized politeness. She pulled a yellow form from her folder. One more thing. Moving trucks are only allowed in the cul-de-sac until 7 p.m. After that, there's a non-compliance fee. It's 6:18. Yes, she said sweetly. I'm just making sure we understand each other early. Behind me, Mia muttered quietly. Oh my God, she's HOA Barbie. Karen absolutely heard it. But before she could answer, another voice came from across the street. She give you the handbook yet? A man in grease-stained work clothes was walking up the sidewalk carrying a chlorine bucket under one arm. Early 30 sounds. Lean. Sunburned. Brown hair buzzed short like he cut it himself in a bathroom mirror. Tattoos faded by too much desert sun. He had the tired posture of somebody who worked outside for a living and the cautious eyes of somebody who had learned this neighborhood talked too much. That thing's heavier than the Bible, he said. Karen's smile vanished completely this time. Ethan, she said coldly. Ethan Cole nodded once. Karen. No handshake, no friendliness, just history. Karen adjusted the papers against her chest. Well, she said to me, welcome to Sunridge Palms, Mr. Brooks. Then she lowered her voice slightly. Some people here confuse friendliness with permission. I'd advise against that. She turned, walked back to the SUV, and drove away without another word. I watched the taillights disappear past the fountain. Then Ethan looked at me and said the sentence I would think about 3 nights later while staring at a swimming pool glowing pink under moonlight. Don't let her decide you're harmless, he said. She gets mean when she thinks she owns somebody. The water was pink. Not light pink. Not a chemical haze. Not sunset reflection. Bright, neon, bubblegum pink. The kind of pink that looked radioactive under morning sunlight. I stood barefoot at the edge of the pool at 5:41 inches the morning wearing sweatpants and an old navy t-shirt I'd slept in. For a full 10 seconds, I honestly thought I was still dreaming. The surface shimmered softly in the dawn light, smooth and perfect, like somebody had poured melted candy into the deep end overnight. Behind me, the sliding glass door opened. Mia stepped onto the patio, holding her phone. Her hair looked worse than yesterday somehow, dark curls exploding in random directions around her face. She squinted at the pool once, then immediately burst out laughing. Oh my God. I didn't laugh. Mia walked closer to the water. Dad, she said between laughs, your pool looks like a gender reveal party exploded. I crouched near the edge. The water smelled normal. Chlorine. Salt. Maybe something metallic underneath. Hard to tell. Then I noticed the footprints. Wet shoe prints across the concrete near the side gate. Small, narrow heels. My stomach tightened. I went back inside and pulled up the security camera app connected to the backyard system. The previous owner had installed 6 cameras around the property after a burglary 2 years earlier. At the time, I'd thought it was excessive. At 2:13 a.m., the motion alert triggered. The footage showed the side gate opening slowly. Karen Holloway stepped into my backyard wearing white capri pants and a pale pink windbreaker. Even on grainy night vision footage, she moved like somebody walking through property she already believed belonged to her. She carried a plastic container in one hand. She walked straight to the pool, unscrewed the lid, poured something in, then stood there watching the water for nearly 30 seconds before leaving. No hurry, no panic, just satisfaction. Mia stared at the screen beside me. "Holy hell!" she whispered. I replayed it twice. 3 times. Same calm expression every time. That bothered me more than the trespassing. People doing something stupid usually look nervous. Karen looked experienced. An hour later, I was knocking on her front door. Karen's house sat 3 lots down from mine, larger than the others, but decorated with the same sterile perfection as a luxury hotel lobby. White stone planters, identical hedges, no leaves anywhere. Even the American flag hanging near the garage looked ironed. Karen opened the door dressed for tennis, despite it not even being 7 in the morning. She smiled when she saw me. Then she saw my face and smiled wider. "Daniel," she said sweetly, "what can I do for you?" I held up my phone and showed her the screenshot from the camera footage. Her expression didn't change, not even slightly. "You entered my backyard last night." Karen glanced at the image. "Oh," she said casually, that, like she was discussing weather. "You poured something into my pool." "Yes," she said. "A balancing agent." "A what?" "A community light balancing compound." I stared at her. Karen crossed her arms. "Your pool lighting reflects across 3 neighboring properties after dark. Several residents have complained. You broke into my yard. It wasn't locked. That's your defense?" "No," she said calmly. "My defense is that your pool now looks much better." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because some people become so absurd, the brain rejects them automatically. Karen tilted her head slightly. "You should really avoid aggressive reactions, Daniel. People around here notice temperament." There it was again. That word choice. Not behavior. Temperament. Like she was building a file on me. I left before I said something stupid. By noon, the HOA email arrived. Official notice of non-compliance. Reason: artificially altered pool coloration negatively affecting community aesthetics and potentially reducing surrounding property values. Fine, $500. Mia read the email twice before collapsing onto the couch, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Then she uploaded the security footage to TikTok. By dinner, the video had 40,000 views. By midnight, it had over 2 million. Pink Pool Lady started trending locally in Arizona. The comments got uglier after that. Half the internet thought Karen was insane. The other half thought I staged the whole thing. Sunridge Palms residents started acting differently almost immediately. A woman walking her golden retriever crossed the street when she saw me checking the mailbox. A retired guy washing his Corvette stopped waving altogether. One neighbor actually closed his garage door the second I looked in his direction. Karen had started talking. That night, Ethan showed up at my house carrying a water testing kit. He looked nervous for the first time since I'd met him. Sweat darkened the collar of his gray work shirt, even though the air had cooled off outside. "I need a sample," he said quietly. We crouched beside the glowing pink water while Mia filmed from the patio. Ethan dipped a strip into the pool. The color drained from his face almost immediately. "What?" I asked. He looked around before answering, like the palm trees might be listening. "That's not pool dye. What is it?" Ethan stayed quiet too long. Then finally, "Honestly?" He capped the sample tube carefully. "I was hoping it was pool dye." He left 10 minutes later without explaining anything else. Around midnight, I walked outside alone. The pool glowed softly under the patio lights, pink water moving quietly in the dark desert heat. And for the first time since moving to Sunridge Palms, I had the very clear feeling that Karen Holloway hadn't done this just to harass me. She'd done it for a reason. 3 days after the pool turned pink, my water bill tripled. That was the first thing that stopped feeling like harassment and started feeling mathematical. I was sitting at the kitchen island at 3 inches the morning, reading the bill beside a half-finished cup of coffee, while the pink glow from the backyard reflected faintly through the windows like a neon wound. Mia was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sprinklers somewhere down the street. The bill said I'd used enough water in 72 hours to refill half the pool twice. That wasn't possible. I checked the filter system myself. No leak, no overflow, no drainage. I spent 23 years auditing environmental infrastructure contracts for California. Numbers stop feeling random after a while. Patterns become personalities, and this bill had personality all over it. At 8:11 a.m., Ethan showed up again. This time he looked worse. Same gray work shirt, same battered pickup truck, but his hands shook slightly when he climbed out carrying a black utility case. He hadn't shaved in a day or two, and there were dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept much since testing the pool water. "You got the bill yet?" he asked immediately. I held it up. "Thought so." We walked into the backyard together. The pool was still glowing pink beneath the morning sun. Softer now, but somehow creepier because I'd started getting used to it. Ethan crouched near the equipment panel and removed the concrete access cover beside the filtration pipes. "Did Karen ever mention irrigation easements?" he asked. "No, she wouldn't." Underneath the cover sat 3 pipes, 2 normal PVC lines, and 1 industrial steel pipe, nearly twice as thick, running underground toward the neighboring properties. I stared at it. "That wasn't in the inspection report." Ethan laughed once without humor. "Because technically it doesn't exist." Then he went quiet. That silence again. The kind that meant he was deciding how much trouble honesty would cost him. Ethan finally leaned back against the patio wall and rubbed both hands over his face. "I helped install some of this stuff 6 years ago," he admitted quietly. "Karen hired contractors off book, paid cash. For what? To reroute water." I looked back at the pipe. "Why?" He hesitated long enough to tell me the answer mattered. "Because Arizona limits residential water allocation during drought years, especially luxury pools. But HOA board properties somehow never had restrictions." He nodded toward the underground line. "This system moves water between houses without triggering standard usage flags." I stared at him. "You're telling me this neighborhood shares water illegally?" "Not the neighborhood. Ethan corrected softly. Certain houses. A breeze moved across the yard then, carrying heat and chlorine and desert dust together. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked nonstop behind a fence. I suddenly understood why Karen had reacted so fast to the pink pool. The chemical, the trespassing, the panic behind the fake confidence. She wasn't vandalizing my property. She was checking the pipeline. Mia came outside halfway through the conversation, holding her phone like it was attached to her nervous system. She looked pale. "There's something you should see." She handed me the screen. A direct message from an anonymous account. "Delete the video or things get worse." Underneath was our address and a photo of the front of the house taken sometime during the night. Mia tried acting tougher than she felt. That came from Emily. My wife had been terrified of hospitals during chemo and still joked with nurses while poison dripped into her veins, but I saw Mia's fingers shaking. "You know who sent this?" I asked Ethan. He didn't answer immediately. That answer told me enough. Around noon, an older woman approached while I was checking the side yard near the property line. She walked slowly, using a silver cane decorated with faded flower stickers, mid 70s. Thin enough to look fragile until you saw the sharpness in her eyes. White hair pinned loosely behind her head. A long scar disappeared beneath the collar of her pale blue blouse. "Mr. Brooks?" she asked gently. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Evelyn Harper. I live across the retention pond." She glanced around before stepping closer. "Nobody else will tell you this because they're scared of Karen." That got my attention. Mrs. Harper lowered her voice. 5 years ago, a man named Leonard Pruitt tried fighting the HOA over utility charges. Karen said he was disruptive, dangerous. Within 6 months, his house was sold, and he disappeared. What happened to him? Nobody knew. That was the unsettling part. "He just left," she whispered. And after that, people learned to keep quiet. Before leaving, she looked toward the pink pool. "That color means something," she said softly. "I've seen it before." Then she walked away without explaining further. That night, I stood alone in the backyard again, staring at the water. Pink reflections moved across the patio walls like living light, and beneath the low humming sound of the filtration system, I could hear something else now. Water moving underground. Not just under my yard. Under the entire neighborhood. Karen announced the charity event 4 days after Mia's video crossed 5 million views. Not a neighborhood meeting. Not a legal statement. A party. That told me everything I needed to know about how her mind worked. The invitation arrived taped to my mailbox in a glossy pink envelope, thick enough to feel expensive. Sunridge Palms Breast, Cancer Awareness Fundraiser Pink Pool Night. Underneath, in smaller gold lettering, "In support of positivity, healing, and community unity." Mia read it twice at the kitchen counter, then slowly looked up at me. "She turned your vandalized pool into a themed event. She turned it into branding." I corrected. The party started at sunset Saturday night at the community clubhouse. By 7 o'clock, the entire place looked like somebody had dipped a country club into cotton candy. Pink lanterns hung from palm trees. Pink cocktails. Pink ribbons tied around white patio chairs. Even the fountain near the entrance had pink underwater lights installed for the evening. Karen stood near the center of it all, wearing a floor-length rose-colored dress that matched the pool almost perfectly. She moved through the crowd, touching elbows, smiling softly, hugging people with practiced sympathy. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was running for public office after surviving a tragedy. And The worst part? It was working. Residents who'd ignored me for a week suddenly had emotional reasons to support her. Nobody wants to feel like the bad guy at a charity event. A jazz trio played softly near the bar while people whispered about me without realizing I was 10 feet away. That poor woman. He humiliated her online. California people always bring drama. Karen spotted me near the back patio and smiled immediately. Predators always notice movement. "Daniel," she called warmly into the microphone. "I'm so glad you came." Conversations around the pool quieted almost instantly. Karen stepped onto the small presentation stage beside the water. Behind her sat a projection screen displaying the fundraiser logo, a pink ribbon floating above an image of my pool. "Tonight," she announced, "is about healing negativity through community." That woman could have sold arson insurance to a forest fire. Mia stood beside me wearing black jeans and an oversized Nirvana shirt, looking like a teenager attending her own parole hearing. But I noticed she kept checking her phone every few seconds. Nervous, not angry, focused. Across the patio, Ethan leaned against the fence near the equipment shed. People gave him space without trying to hide it. Nobody spoke to him. A middle-aged man in golf clothes actually moved his wife away after recognizing him. Ethan noticed. That hurt more than he let show. He had the posture of somebody used to physical labor but not public shame. Arms crossed tightly, eyes lowered, watching the party like he expected something terrible to happen. Then Karen started speaking about me directly. "There are people," she said carefully, "who move into communities like ours without respecting the balance already here." Soft murmurs of agreement moved through the crowd. They create fear, conflict, suspicion. They damage trust for attention online. Now everybody was looking at me openly. Karen sighed dramatically. My heart breaks for anyone struggling emotionally after personal tragedy. It truly does. But grief cannot become an excuse for destabilizing an entire neighborhood. That landed exactly how she wanted. A few people nodded sympathetically. Emily's death hanging in the air without Karen ever saying her name, weaponized empathy. I felt Mia tense beside me. Then my phone buzzed. One text message. Unknown number. Look at the screen in 30 seconds. I turned toward Mia slowly. She didn't look at me, just kept typing on her phone with both thumbs moving fast. Karen continued speaking. "We must reject division." The projector behind her suddenly flickered. Karen stopped talking. The fundraiser logo vanished. Security footage replaced it. Black and white camera footage. Timestamp, 2:13 a.m. Karen entering my backyard carrying the chemical container. The entire patio froze. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Karen turned around, slowly toward the screen. For the first time since I'd met her, I saw pure panic crack through the performance. The footage kept playing. Karen pouring chemicals into my pool. Karen standing there watching the water turn pink. Then another image appeared. Blueprints. Underground water lines running beneath multiple homes in Sunridge Palms. Numbers beside monthly water transfers. Highlighted billing irregularities. A chart comparing resident water bills over 6 years. The crowd erupted instantly. "What the hell is that?" She lied to us. "Karen, what are we looking at?" Mia finally looked up from her phone, quietly. "You're welcome." Karen grabbed the microphone so hard the feedback squealed. "This is illegal," she snapped. "This is manipulated." But the mood had changed too fast. Fear had become curiosity. And curiosity is poison to people like Karen. A man near the bar stood up suddenly, tall, balding, expensive polo shirt tucked too tightly over a stomach built by retirement and denial. I recognized him vaguely from 2 houses down. Greg Whitmore, treasurer of the HOA. "You told us the water fees were drought adjustments," he said loudly. Karen's face went pale. That was the moment I realized something important. Not everybody involved knew the whole story. The projector switched slides again. More billing records, more transfers. The jazz band quietly packed up without being told. Ethan finally pushed himself off the fence and walked toward the crowd. People moved aside automatically now. Not avoiding him anymore. Making room. Karen looked around at the residents surrounding her, and for the first time since moving into Sunridge Palms, I saw something underneath all the control. Not confidence. Fear. Real fear. The water stopped at 3:17 inches the afternoon. Worst possible time. Arizona heat sat at 114 degrees that day, the kind of dry temperature that makes breathing feel borrowed. I was standing in my kitchen rinsing coffee grounds from the sink when the faucet coughed once and died. No drip, no pressure, nothing. 10 seconds later, my phone started vibrating. Group messages. Neighborhood alerts. People panicking. No water in Section C. Is this a city issue? My kids are stuck in the shower. What's happening? Then, Karen's email arrived. Subject: Emergency Community Notice. Due to ongoing unauthorized interference with neighborhood infrastructure, temporary water disruption may occur. Residents are advised to remain calm while HOA leadership resolves the issue. Unauthorized interference, meaning me. I stared at the screen for a long moment before Mia walked in holding her phone. She's blaming you already. Outside, the neighborhood had changed shape. Garage doors stood open. Residents gathered in driveways holding dead garden hoses and empty water pitchers like survivors after a storm. Panic strips away suburb politeness faster than almost anything. Ethan's truck came flying around the corner hard enough to spray gravel. He jumped out before the engine fully stopped. She shut the secondary pump station down. What? She locked it manually. His face looked pale beneath the desert sun. She's trying to force residents to sign support statements before she restores service. That sounded insane, which meant it was probably true. 20 minutes later, we reached the pump station near the edge of the retention basin behind the clubhouse. Small concrete utility structure, no signs, no markings. Just a steel security door hidden behind oleander bushes. A crowd had already formed nearby, and Karen was speaking to them like a campaign manager during a crisis. She stood on top of a decorative stone planter, wearing sunglasses and white linen despite the heat, somehow still composed, while half the neighborhood baked around her. "If we stand united," she announced, "we can resolve this sabotage quickly." Beside her stood a folding table covered in printed forms. "Support your HOA leadership." Signatures already filling pages. Fear makes people obedient. Then Mrs. Harper collapsed. It happened fast. 1 second, she was standing near the curb, holding her cane. The next, her knees folded underneath her. People screamed. A little white terrier beside her started barking hysterically. Tiny old dog, clouded left eye, red collar hanging loose around its neck. The kind of dog that survives mostly through stubbornness. I reached her first. Her skin felt frighteningly hot. "She needs water now." I snapped. Karen froze. Just froze. Not helping. Not moving. Still thinking politically. That was the moment the crowd turned emotionally. You could actually feel it happen. Ethan looked at me once. "We opened the station," he said. "No argument after that." He cut the padlock himself. Inside, the pump station looked nothing like standard neighborhood utilities. Industrial pipes covered the walls in branching steel lines. Additional monitoring equipment sat mounted beside HOA accounting boxes. Hidden surveillance screens displayed camera feeds from all over Sunridge Palms, driveways, sidewalks, pool areas. Mia stared at the monitors in disbelief. "She's been spying on everybody?" Ethan opened a locked filing cabinet near the back wall. The smell hit first. Dust, metal, old paper. Inside sat years of records, water rerouting logs, cash reimbursements, false maintenance invoices, dozens of HOA payments signed directly to shell companies connected to Karen. Then Ethan found the valve. Manual override wheel, locked shut. He looked sick, staring at it. She did this herself. Behind us, Mia had already started live streaming. At first, I didn't even realize. Then I heard her voice. "Okay, guys," she said into the camera shakily. "You are literally watching HOA corruption in real time." The live stream exploded instantly. Comments moving faster than she could read. News accounts joining. People clipping Karen's speeches beside footage of residents carrying empty buckets through the heat. Outside, paramedics loaded Mrs. Harper into an ambulance. Karen tried following them while still talking into her Bluetooth headset. Nobody listened anymore. Not one person. Residents started shouting questions instead. "What else did you lie about? You shut our water off?" My grandson was home alone. Greg Whitmore appeared near the station entrance, sweating through his polo shirt, holding stacks of financial records against his chest like they physically hurt him. He looked 10 years older than he had at the fundraiser. "She moved money through reserve accounts," he said weakly. Jesus Christ. Ethan turned the override wheel. The pipes groaned immediately. Deep metallic vibration beneath the concrete floor. Then, somewhere outside, people started cheering. Water returning house by house. Karen heard it too. And the look on her face when the crowd realized the water was back without her permission. I'll remember that expression for the rest of my life. Not anger, not embarrassment, loss. Control leaving her body in real time. That night, after the police arrived and reporters started gathering outside Sunridge Palms, I sat alone beside my still faintly pink pool. The desert air had finally cooled. For weeks, I'd told myself I just wanted peace, wanted quiet, wanted to disappear into a slower life after Emily died. But somewhere between Karen poisoning my pool and Mrs. Harper collapsing in the street, something had shifted inside me. I wasn't trying to escape anymore. I was staying. And for the first time since my wife died, that decision didn't feel heavy. It felt necessary. Karen Holloway disappeared on a Tuesday. No announcement, no resignation letter, no dramatic final confrontation, just gone. By sunrise, her house sat dark and empty behind perfectly trimmed hedges that nobody had watered overnight. The white SUV was gone. The pink patio furniture was gone. Even the little ceramic flamingos near the front walkway had disappeared, like somebody had erased her in sections. People kept expecting her to come back. That was the strange part. Trauma leaves routines behind. Residents still lowered their voices walking past the clubhouse. People still glanced over their shoulders before criticizing the HOA out loud. Fear lingers longer than authority does. Arizona opened the investigation 2 days later. State auditors, water management officials, Financial Crimes Division, 3 separate agencies. Sunridge Palms suddenly looked less like a luxury community and more like an active crime scene with palm trees. I spent most of that week helping Ethan repair the underground system. Turns out, hidden infrastructure ages badly when it's built around corruption instead of engineering. We worked 12-hour days under brutal heat, opening buried valve boxes and replacing illegal bypass lines. Ethan looked different now that he'd stopped hiding. Still lean, still exhausted looking, but lighter somehow. Like guilt had physical weight, and he'd finally set part of it down. Residents started bringing us food, water bottles, coffee. One afternoon, Mrs. Harper's terrier wandered into my backyard, carrying somebody's gardening glove in its mouth like a trophy. Tiny old Ara still barked at everyone, despite nearly collapsing from heat stroke the week before. Mrs. Harper herself returned from the hospital 3 days later. Slower, thinner, but furious. I leave for 48 hours and this neighborhood becomes a Netflix documentary, she told me from my patio chair. That woman recovered from medical emergencies entirely through sarcasm. Mia loved her instantly. Mia had changed too. The documentary clips she posted online exploded far beyond Arizona. News channels picked them up, podcast interviews followed. Suddenly, my 16-year-old daughter was sitting at the kitchen table explaining HOA corruption to radio hosts while eating cereal in pajama pants. She acted annoyed by the attention. Secretly, she loved it. And honestly, after the year she'd survived watching her mother disappear piece by piece in hospital rooms, I was glad to hear her laugh loudly again. 3 weeks after Karen vanished, residents voted unanimously to dissolve the old HOA board. Greg Whitmore cried during the meeting. Actually cried. Big, red-faced accountant tears. Apparently, discovering your signature sits on 6 years of fraudulent financial documents does that to a person. Nobody sued me. That surprised reporters more than anything. A lawyer from Phoenix actually drove out to my house offering contingency representation. Tall guy. Expensive watch. Teeth too white to trust. You're potentially looking at 8 figures here, he told me while standing beside my still faintly pink pool. I looked at him for a long moment, then said no, because somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about revenge. Emily used to say, grief either hardens people or opens them up. Nothing in between. For almost a year after she died, I'd hardened. Now suddenly, I wasn't anymore. By October, the neighborhood pool reopened. Not Karen's private community showcase. An actual public space. Families everywhere. Kids splashing. Music playing from cheap portable speakers. Somebody grilling hamburgers badly near the west fence. Normal. The new lighting system underneath the water glowed soft pink after sunset. At first, people worried the color would upset everyone. Instead, the entire neighborhood went quiet looking at it. Because for the first time, pink didn't mean manipulation, or fear, or Karen. It just looked peaceful. That night, Mia sat beside me near the edge of the water with her feet dangling into the pool. You know, she said, Mom would have loved this. That hit harder than I expected. I looked down at my left hand. At the wedding ring I'd worn every day since Emily died. Slowly, carefully, I slid it off for the first time in 14 months. Not because I loved her less, because carrying someone forward is different from refusing to move. Mia saw me do it, but didn't say anything. She just leaned her head quietly against my shoulder the way she used to when she was little. Much later that night, after everyone left, I walked home alone through warm desert air, carrying my shoes in one hand. The neighborhood finally sounded normal. Sprinklers ticking, dogs barking, people laughing somewhere in the distance. Alive. When I reached my backyard, I stopped immediately. Something floated near the center of the pool. White plastic bottle. No label, no markings. Half submerged in the water. I stepped closer slowly. The pool lights shimmered underneath it. Soft pink. Very faint now, barely visible, but spreading. I looked around the yard. Nobody there. No sound except water moving quietly against the tile. Then I noticed the side gate swinging slightly open in the night breeze. And for the first time in weeks, I genuinely didn't know whether Karen Holloway was gone or simply waiting. Sometimes the hardest part of life is not moving boxes, but carrying the weight in our hearts. We all face moments where pride, fear, stress, and misunderstanding stand between us and peace. But kindness, patience, and honest conversation can open doors that anger never will. This story reminds us that every person we meet may be fighting a silent battle. A little compassion can change someone's entire day, and sometimes even their life. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need encouragement today. Leave a comment about a moment in your life when kindness helped you through a difficult season. And if you enjoy meaningful stories like this, subscribe to the channel and join our community. May God bless everyone watching this video with peace, strength, protection, and new beginnings. If you believe God is guiding your path even through difficult moments, comment Amen.